If you're chronically online, and I know you are, you may remember a short film that seemed to overtake every trans person's timeline for a couple of days about a year ago now. I am, of course, talking about Angelic Kitty Miracle-Chan, written, directed, and animated by Colin Armistead. To say this film was received divisively among audiences, both trans and not, would be a bit of an understatement. I want to preface that I do not wish to reignite the onslaught of negative attention both the film and Colin dealt with. Rather, I want to look back on what it means to me and why it garnered such a mixed reception in the first place. With that said, by all metrics, I do think in the end Angelic Kitty Miracle-Chan did find its target audience and was received favorably once the fire of discourse died down. Firstly though, I want to quickly summarize the short film so those unaware can have an idea of what I'm talking about, and to jog the memory of those who may have forgotten it existed, as it has been a whole year online. But I would recommend just watching and rewatching it. It is literally 7 minutes long. To open your, and I emphasize this, short film with a 1.5-minute long anime intro is certainly a choice, but it's one that will be important a little later. This animated intro was done so convincingly that many thought Angelic Kitty Miracle-Chan was a real magical girl anime that got lost to time. Miracle-Chan herself, we're on a first name basis, checks pretty much every box under the definition of moe. When transformed, she's this ultra cute, ultra stylized, big-eyed anime girl in a maid-inspired outfit sporting pink hair, cat ears, a big bell on the front with a tail and bow in the back. We then see our main character, Alex, crudely shaving their legs in a room somewhat reminiscent of Welcome to the NHK. Going from their bedroom to the classroom, Alex is shown making posts on their Miracle-Chan dedicated Tumblr while getting a text from a girl sitting behind them. She tells them after class to come to a party that she's throwing, to which they respond with a sort of non-answer. Alex walks home, and waiting for them is a package that contains a Miracle-Chan anime ga kigurumi, or a cosplay with one of those big heads, you know? Stripping down in their dark room, Alex attempts to put on the cosplay, but when doing so is unable to fully zip up the back and put it over their shoulders. Still though, they put on the mask and fumble around a bit, leading to the projector in their room to turn on and shine the bright, colorful anime intro onto their face covered in shadow. They immediately throw out the cosplay and make their way to the party, but upon arriving, just kind of stand outside awkwardly, ultimately ending in a shot of Alex laying in bed, watching Angelic Kitty Miracle-Chan on their laptop. That was an oversimplification of the work for the sake of brevity, but we'll return to a few key scenes here shortly. First though, I want to talk about Miracle-Chan, the character, and what exactly she represents in this film. Scrolling through negative comments and reviews, I see many people citing that this film is placing otaku culture and the moe aesthetic in a negative light and fails to work as a piece of critique. Loosely quoting some of the shared sentiment, this short film is painting the otaku as a porn-addicted loser who stands outside of parties and uses Tumblr. And to an extent, I can understand that position. I think that if your takeaway revolves around this failing as a commentary on otaku culture and everything moe, you're actually sort of right, because I don't think that was the intention when creating this film. I've seen many people compare this to Too Kawaii for Comfort, and side note, I also made that connection, but only because Angelic Kitty Miracle-Chan's long-ass name reminded me of Magical Justice Savior Rita-chan. But to those unfamiliar, Too Kawaii for Comfort is a short series that I believe more directly satirizes and plays with early 2000s otaku and con culture. It slaps you in the face with its commentary about this culture and depictions of a variety of colorful personalities you run into at a con. Whereas Miracle-Chan is less so concerned with the culture and the moe aesthetic in general, and rather what they mean to our main character. Referring back to that anime intro, Miracle-Chan, prior to transforming, is a relatively androgynous looking girl wearing a big hoodie and tight under shorts. Alongside this, paying attention to the lyrics of the opening theme, we have this line about transforming with the power that all girls hold, and multiple references to finding the power in your heart. At the heart of all this, and what I'm most interested in, is how she depicts this romanticized, unachievable symbol of girlhood that Alex gets so lost in. When asked the question, does Miracle-Chan help the protagonist in the film, Colin replies quite decisively, "Oh, she does not help at all, she makes everything worse." And herein lies what I believe is being said with Miracle-Chan as a character. Unlike Alex, she is able to transform into a hyper-feminine, ultra-cute, dare I say kawaii anime girl, something that is purely unrealistic. It's not as if Alex doesn't understand that. No, I think the fact that they do understand that they cannot be like Miracle-Chan is what gives this film such a sad and, at times, gross feel. To continue quoting Colin's response to this question, he says, "While at the beginning she acts as a means of self-reflection, by the time that he's trying to actually present more femininely, Miracle-Chan is a mocking force. She never fully exists. She's always just merchandise. She's a TV show. She's posters on walls. She's on a projector in the room. Her presence is always mocking. Alex, pretty blatantly, is a character coping with dysphoria in a very unsustainable way, and I believe Miracle-Chan herself is the embodiment of that, while the film as a whole is a commentary on the quite common phenomenon of projecting and repressing. Do I think it's the deepest thing ever? No, far from it, but I do think it's interesting to discuss because it is a deeply personal film. To use up my last extended quote for this video, in response to a question regarding what the character of Miracle-Chan represents to Colin, he replies, "That idea of being able to just wave a magic wand and transform into your ideal perfect self really appealed as someone who identifies as gender fluid and has also experienced a lot of body dysmorphic disorder in my life." Later, when talking about that desire to just wake up as a pretty girl, Colin says, "Anime girls represent this sort of idealized feminine, this sort of perfect, untouchable, fake thing, you know? It's easier to focus on that and to want to be that rather than looking at another human being who's just as flawed as you, who's just as real as you. But if you want to be this fake thing, you don't have to make concessions with the fact that this is a real thing, because it isn't." The scene I want to turn our attention to is the one where Alex returns home, attempts to wear the cosplay, and then throws it away. Mainly because this is the scene that has continued to stick with me the most out of everything here. Alex, having pretty much turned down the invite to the party, instead goes back to their room and, without turning on any lights and making sure to close the blinds, shakily takes the Miracle-Chan cosplay out of its box. They begin slowly putting on the main part of her outfit, but it doesn't quite zip up all the way, and while we don't really get any sort of noticeable reaction, I can sort of infer, or I guess project, what Alex might be feeling. That moment that your racing heart kind of drops, realizing that you won't get to look like the pretty girl you imagine in your head. That anxious feeling you have throughout your entire day, waiting, knowing that you get to try on whatever you ordered when you get home, just for it to not work out. I remember seeing a post along the lines of, why didn't Alex just take their measurements to avoid this? And well, I think that would defeat the entire purpose of the scene. I also think it not fitting is supposed to emphasize that, unlike Miracle-Chan, they can't just transform magically. In this moment, they are forced to be in their body, and the body that isn't doing what they want it to, the body they've spent the last however long solely projecting onto the image of Miracle-Chan, until her and her ever-mocking presence projects right back onto them. I think the theme song blaring here is also quite important. This song has been used by Alex repeatedly in these moments of escape, but here it's taunting, it's mocking them. I'm also pretty sure that the specific lyric that gets played here is "transform with the power that all girls hold," something that Alex wasn't able to do. After they shut the projector off, we hold on the shot of their back where the zipper failed to go up any further, hammering home that this body is holding them back from being what they so desperately want. Immediately following this, we see Alex throw the cosplay away, and this is another thing I've seen people pick apart. Like, why do they do this so suddenly? If I'm being honest, I think this happened so quickly because there is a minute left in the film. But also, and a more fun question to ask is, why would they keep the cosplay around? To further taunt them? To remind them that they can't fit into it? No, if anything, through keeping it around, they're just setting themselves up to be disappointed again and again. I think this whole sequence is a really personal exploration of just how easily projection can come back to wound you. With all that said, and I know I keep referencing the mixed reactions at the beginning, but that really is what makes me so interested in all of this. Why were people calling this transphobic? Obviously, everyone has a right to their own opinion, yeah, but seriously, what's the deal? I took far longer than I'd like to admit scrolling replies, comments, quote tweets, and fucking letterboxd reviews, and I think I have a general idea. For starters though, and maybe more so than those comments, a lot of people simply think that the film is hollow and that it doesn't say anything profound or, frankly, anything at all. While I would disagree, I think taking away that it completely fails to say anything is a bit of a stretch. I really hate the sentiment that something like this has to be profound. I understand wishing there was more and that it gave us just a few more crumbs, which is perfectly fine. I just think that demanding that out of a film such as this is going to leave you disappointed. Point is, I think something as personal as this is of course going to fall on deaf ears for some, but I also know people who felt like they got stabbed in the chest watching this. I personally think that's kinda neat. I wouldn't say there's anything groundbreaking explored here, but it's an interesting watch and I can appreciate the work that went into it. Look, as an award-nominated short film director myself, I understand when your art doesn't get the recognition it so clearly deserves.
Welcome.
Back to what I was saying about the alleged transphobia. A lot of people seem to take issue with the picture of trans femininity that this film supposedly paints, reinforcing negative stereotypes, making things worse than they already are, being incredibly self-loathing with little substance, etc. There's a much larger discussion to be had about quote-unquote depicting trans people right, and the phrase setting the community back X amount of years gets thrown around quite often. Specifically in the case of Angelic Kitty Miracle-Chan though, I can't help but feel those claims carry very little weight. Assuming that Alex is supposed to be a trans woman who is either repressing or hasn't figured it out and is obviously coping in unhealthy ways, I struggle to understand why people saw this and jumped on the idea that they are supposed to be, or can be taken as, being representative of all trans women. Of course, I know how people responded to exactly what I just said, perks of being over a year late. It makes my straw woman a little less full of straw. Their argument typically hinges on the fact that the average person watching this would have their negative biases reinforced by this film. If they believe all trans women to be socially isolated, porn-addicted weirdos, this does not challenge that assumption. If anything, it only bolsters that claim and showcases it to more people, thus making the whole situation worse. I really dislike this way of thinking for a couple of reasons, though I do understand people's concerns. But like, genuinely, I don't think this film in particular is gonna sway the masses. Even moving away from this film itself for a second, arguing that there needs to be a happy ending for trans characters, as people did here, what does that accomplish? I think it only hinders people from making introspective personal art that can be and will be gross and uncomfortable. Is Alex supposed to be representative of all trans women? No. But can people take that away? Yes. And they're wrong. If you're worried about all the ways people can take something, you'll only end up making an ultra-sanitized marketable product instead of anything that could say anything at all. If we want to combine the last two claims, there's also people who say that because it lacks substance, it can't meaningfully depict a trans character in this way. It simply doesn't go far enough, so it falls flat and wraps back around to be negative. I know this is a non-rebuttal, but what do people want from this? It's an indie short film that's about one person's experiences with their own identity. It wasn't ever going to be any more than that, and I think that's perfectly fine. And okay, I lied, I'm using another quote. Colin says that while the film's ending isn't the most positive one imaginable, it's what feels most real to this character's experience in this time in their life. Their problems don't get magically fixed. This is just another step on their journey of self-discovery. While we don't see any growth from Alex by the end of the film, who's to say they don't learn anything from their experience down the line? I think a big reason why people were so overly critical of this is simply because they couldn't escape it for a few days there. Genuinely, every trans niche internet micro-celebrity had to get their take in, yours truly included, of course, so naturally people would go into the film expecting more, only to leave feeling somewhat disappointed if they didn't resonate with it. This adds on to the people claiming that Angelic Kitty Miracle-Chan can be seen as transphobic, as it seems like a much larger deal than it actually ended up being. If you take anything away from this today, it should be that people are going to interpret things however they wish to do so, and likely in ways that were never even considered by the creator. While I did spend a whole section disagreeing with a lot of people here, in general, being able to evoke a wide range of reactions in a variety of people is a testament to what art is and what art does. It doesn't have to be the craziest thing ever to get some people saying it made them cry, while at the same time getting other people to post novellas in their 1-star Letterboxd reviews. That's just pretty cool to me, and I'm really happy that this thing got made in the first place. And, okay, Sharks, you're gonna love my pitch for the next big short film to hit the Twitter timeline, alright? Eulogy for a Clown 2, the sequel to the acclaimed film of a similar name.